Hello and welcome to day 5. Now we're going to be talking about some more phrases. This is going to deal with the participle phrase. This is the first phrase, if you remember back in our verbal family here. It's the first phrase that we're going to take a look at in our verbals. Now, you may be wondering, what is a verbal? It's if you think of it like this, it's like superheroes. If you think about your classic superheroes like Superman or Spider-Man or Batman, they all have like alternate identities. And so let's say Batman, for instance, he's Bruce Wayne underneath. And whenever he's Bruce Wayne, he's the eclectic millionaire. He owns businesses. He goes to board meetings. He does the things that Bruce Wayne does. But when he puts on the Bat costume, now things are a little bit different. He doesn't function the same way that Bruce Wayne functioned. He goes out, fights crime. He has all these gadgets. He does all these different things. And so when he's got the Bat costume on, he functions differently. But let me ask you, isn't he still Bruce Wayne underneath the costume? Just like Spider-Man is still Peter Parker underneath the costume? You see, they're still going to have some of the same traits that they've always had. They're going to have the same personalities. They're going to have the same likes or dislikes. That doesn't change. Their function changes, but underneath doesn't change. And so verbals are basically the superheroes in our English language. They do lots of awesome things. And if you really include things like participles and gerunds and infinitives in your writing, it's going to really open up a lot of possibilities. And it gets more bang for your buck, to be honest with you. Participles, since they're used as adjectives, they're much more dynamic than a regular old one-word adjective, because what they do is they have that verb essence, the action-oriented ideas underneath the surface. So yes, you get description, but you also get action at the same time. So it's really more powerful than just a regular adjective. And so the more of these that you can use in your writing, within reason, is really going to help your writing out tremendously. So let's take a look at the participle here. Notice it says it's a verb form that can be used as an adjective. And so this is what makes it really easy, is that the participle is always, always, always an adjective. Now, look at here. It says the present participle ends in ing. Most past participles end in d or ed. Okay? Well, past and present, what does that remind you of? It reminds me of a verb, because verbs have tenses. But I thought we were talking about a verb form that's being used as an adjective. Well, here's the deal. Again, if Batman puts on that costume, then he's going to function as something different than what Bruce Wayne would. But he still is Bruce Wayne underneath. And that's kind of how this is. Even though the verb is putting on this costume and acting like an adjective, it still has the verb qualities underneath the costume. And so in the participles case, it actually has tenses too. Some past tense or past participles can be irregular, just like your verb run. You don't say I run today and I runned yesterday. We're always going to change run to ran, so that's an irregular form, and the participle will be the same. So let's go over some examples here of how to find them. Well, actually, the first part, they give us the example. Like Claire likes to eat canned peaches. Well, what is canned describing? It describes peaches. Okay, but it wasn't just like old peaches. It wasn't, new peaches. It wasn't just a simple one-word adjective. We have the word canned. So notice how canned has this action, like you can can something, you can do that process. But this is not talking about the process, it's talking about the peaches. It's describing the peaches. And so it makes it more dynamic than just a regular adjective. Same here, clapping wildly. Well, who's clapping wildly? What's this describing? It's describing the fans. All right, blossoming flowers. Teresa watered the blossoming flowers. And so let me use this for example here in number 3. Teresa watered the blossoming flowers. Teresa is my subject. Watered is the action verb. Flowers is my direct object. But you actually have two different actions going on at the same time here, because yes, watered is my action verb. So Teresa's watering the flowers. You can picture her watering the flowers. But at the same time, she's not saying she watered the yellow flowers or the white flowers or whatever color, and that would just be stagnant. Here we have that she's watering the blossoming flower. So you have not just the idea of her watering, but you also have the idea of the flowers blossoming. They're moving. And so think of it this way. It's like instead of having a still image and the reader, you are having to just see it as a flat image, well, now it changes from a photograph to a video. And now things are a lot more dynamic. You start seeing things move that you didn't see before. And it's much more powerful in your writing. Okay, let's go to number 4. The child's forgotten toys line the bottom of the toy chest. Forgotten describes the toys. Alright, same thing. 5, decorated with care. The float was popular at the parade, so float. Okay, decorated with care would be our entire participle phrase, which we'll get to in a second. Notice, where is the participle in relation to the word that it describes? Notice how it's right next to it. If you start a sentence with a participle phrase, notice how there's always a comma also. Right there, decorated with care, clapping wildly. Okay, so they still have to fit the exact same criteria that an adjective has to do. They can't change that. In fact, if you change the location of it and you try to put it somewhere else down the sentence, your mind automatically jumps to the nearest noun. Like if I moved decorated with care here and I moved it to the end of the sentence, I would say the float was popular at the parade, decorated with care. Well, now your mind would automatically say, well, what was decorated with care? It's the parade, because that's the nearest noun. And so if you don't want your reader to jump to that nearest noun, you got to put it next to the noun it actually is describing, or at least the one that you want it to be described as. All right. Let's do this one here. All right, so we're doing the same thing. And I'm also going to add the idea of whether it's a past participle or present participle too. So number 1, the roaring wind came first. Roaring is my participle, and it's describing wind. Ends in ing, so it's a present participle. Okay, I guess I could write that out here too. Present. 2, a concerned look. Okay, concerned is my participle. Describes look, and since it ends in ed, that is a past participle. Number 3, the emergency instructions prepared by my mother came in handy. Okay. Well, the instructions came in handy. What kind of instructions are they? They're ones that were okay. They're emergency instructions, yes. What other kind of instructions are they? They are instructions prepared, and I'll go ahead and include this little prepositional phrase here, prepared by my mother. That describes the instructions. Now, while I'm on this also, because we're going to get into some phrases, your verbals are more powerful than regular prepositional phrases. So what will happen here is, like in this case with a participle, here's your participle, and then it will suck in other things to help it describe what it's trying to describe. So in this case, you got prepared by my mother. That's a prepositional phrase. And this participle basically just says, hey, you're going to come with me and we're going to go do this job. We're going to go describe the word instructions. And the prepositional phrase is weaker, so it has to go and do that job. It's got to go and help out. And so that's what it does. It's almost like it's glued to that participle, and it will go over and describe instructions. So this is my participle. The entire thing here is the participle phrase. And notice it makes sense as a chunk here, because what kind of instructions are they? They're instructions prepared by my mother. Okay. Number 4. In a few hours, our house had taped windows. Well, taped describes what kind of windows they are. And you can tape something, so that's your action underneath the surface. So that would be our participle. And I didn't do that up here. Prepared, taped, they're both past because they end in ed. Alright, let's do one more. Candles brought by my mother were ready on the table. Okay, this one should be pretty easy. So candles brought by my mother describes the candles. Brought is my past participle. By my mother just gets attached to it, the same way that we're used to. Okay, so that's basic gist of participles. It's really not that hard. Again, they still have to fit the same criteria as an adjective. They got to be right next to the word it modifies. They have to modify a noun or pronoun, and they got to say which one or what kind. And that's the questions that they're going to answer. All right, so stay tuned for our next video, which will come up later, while on the next part of verbals.